Hi, welcome to this week's 10x leadership video. This week is all about prioritization and productivity, two really important things as a leader. And I thought I could take you through a model. There are lots of models out there, but I thought, well, why take you through just a basic one when what I can do is take you through a model that teaches you to prioritize like a president. So, in case you haven't guessed from the photo, the president that I'm talking about is Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was a five-star general during World War II. He was the Supreme Allied Commander. He was the 34th President of the United States and had 2 terms. So he had plenty of things to get on with, plenty of work to prioritise, and he had to be really, really productive, obviously. And in 1954, he said he had 2 kinds of problems: the urgent and the important. The urgent are not important, and the important are never urgent. And 30 years later, Stephen Covey took the work that Eisenhower had done, I suppose during his life, and it formed part of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, a book I'm sure you've heard of. It's sold more than 40 million copies worldwide. There's lots of really useful stuff in there anyway. And as part of that work, he created the Eisenhower Matrix. It's called lots of other things as well, but that's what we're going to be calling it for this video. I'm going to put a link down to Stephen's book in the description, just in case you're interested and haven't already read that. And I notice on the front there it's got a forward from Jim Collins, and I really like Jim Collins' work. There's a book called Good to Great that I'm going to be covering in one of the videos shortly. There's some really useful concepts in there about a specific type of leader that I think will really help you. So I'm going to be covering that in a video in the not too distant future. Eisenhower really, really busy, and had to be productive and had to be effective. And what we're going to go through now is the Eisenhower Matrix. I'm going to show you that model and how you can utilize it yourself for really good effect. So the model itself is quite simple. Like all good models, there are, it's a 4-box model, and in this it's got 2 axes. It's got one about urgency, so is it low urgency or high urgency, and then it also looks at the importance of an activity. So think of this in terms of work that you might get, or your team might get, or your organisation or company might get. You can apply this model to all of those. And I suppose, like any model, just bear in mind that this is a model. It's a theoretical model. It's useful to know about it. The distinction between tasks, about whether they're urgent or important, might be much more blurred and muddy when you actually come to do it in real life. But nevertheless, it's a really, really useful tool to help you determine where you should spend your time and how you can be most productive. So let's have a look. So as you can see, you've got the down the bottom left hand corner there, you've got low urgency and low importance tasks, and then the top right hand corner in the green section you have tasks that are both urgent and important, and everything in between. So as I say, it's a 2x2 model, nice and simple. Let's have a look at the first quadrant. So the first one is about tasks or activities that are urgent and important. So, you might think these are the most important things that you've got to deal with. And that may well be true. the model says that if you've got something that is urgent and important, what you should do is just basically get on with it, do it. You can imagine something coming in, can't you, that is of importance to your company or organisation, but also is urgent. It's just landed. Seniors perhaps are interested in getting it done. It might just be that, I don't know, you've had a customer getting in touch with you, something's gone wrong, you need to fix it quickly. That can be both urgent and important. And as I say, the model suggests you should just get on and do it. I am going to come back to each of the quadrants in a minute and just go into a little bit more detail. But that's for now. That's what the model says you should do with both urgent and important tasks. Moving on to the second quadrant. These are urgent but not important activities. What do you do with that? So the model here says that you should delegate it. Now, for me, that makes some sense from an individual perspective. If this is something that I don't need to deal with because it's not important, then, but it is urgent, then I could pass it on to one of my team to deal with. So that's what the sort of thinking is with the model, that and I can imagine Dwight in the corner there is, he'd be going, well, this is something that is urgent but it's not important, so I don't need to deal with it, somebody else get on with it. So that's the thinking. Again, I'm going to come back to this in a minute because I think there's a little more to it that I just want to explore. The third category, that is activity that is not urgent but it is important. So you've got something that comes in, you're going to have to deal with it because it's important, or you want to deal with it because it's important. It could be things that you are self-generating. There are lots of bits of work in my teams where we think, well, look, that'd be a really, really good thing to be doing. But it isn't urgent, but it will make a real difference. It is important. So how do you deal with that? The answer here is schedule it. So make sure that you build it into your future plans and make sure you deliver it because it's important, but you don't need to deal with it now. So don't stop what you're doing. Carry on doing, your more urgent activities, but this is important. So make sure you don't miss it, because it'll make a difference. So that's the third category. And the final category, those are activities or jobs that are neither urgent nor important. And as you can probably guess, if they're neither urgent nor important, the model says bin them. Don't bother doing them. Again, I think it's a little more subtle than that. And I'm going to come back in a second and talk about those, why that might not be completely true. But again, I say this is a theoretical model. There are only 4 quadrants on it. It's not going to fit absolutely every situation, but I think we do need to have a look at those. So for those who like mental models or imagery, just to help sort of cement the ideas here, I've just got 4 pictures I'm going to put up here just to illustrate each of these quadrants. So the first one is for the urgent and important category. So as we said before, something comes in, it might be that you've got a customer that's had a problem, you just need to fix it. That is both urgent and important, but it is, a firefighting job, as we've got in the corner there. That picture there is a firefighter. And, you do need to get involved and fix something sometimes and have to do it urgently. But, just like firefighting, that takes a lot of effort to do. And it's also exhausting. So you can do that, but don't spend a lot of time doing that. And the problem that I see is that there are a lot of people, including a lot of leaders, who spend an awful lot of time in this box. And again, my experience tells me that it's particularly leaders with a red insights preference. So, people who like to feel important and also like to be busy and, I suppose feel like they're constantly making a difference. They often get stuck in this space. And the problem with that, as I've already said, is that being in that space is exhausting. It's also just, all you're ever doing is focusing on the immediate problem. And what you're not doing is you're not fixing that problem. You haven't got time then to prevent that problem from happening again. So you're never going to get out of that space if you only ever spend your time in the urgent and important category. Now, again, as I say, this is just a model. So, some of you might be watching this going, well, my job is just about dealing with, urgent and important things. Customer service springs to mind. I suppose, working in A&E, for example, in a hospital, well, yeah, you've got urgent tasks and they're important tasks. You can't just schedule it, but I suppose even that, to a degree, there's a triage process that takes place, isn't there, when people go into A&E, and things that aren't urgent, are really scheduled. They will look at the patient a bit later on because it's not as urgent as somebody who is bleeding and needs to to have that sorted. So, as I say, this, it's a good box in the right circumstances, but try not to spend too much time in there unless your job absolutely dictates, that's what needs to happen. For most people, dip in and out of this box as needed, but try not to be in there. I suppose the other impact is that if you're in that space as a leader, all you're doing then is generating loads of churn and loads of froth and excitement that is having an impact on your team. And if you're constantly reprioritizing the things you do because something more urgent's come in, imagine the impact that's going to have on your team's work. So they all think they've got their days planned, they know what they're doing, and then all of a sudden you say, well, drop that, I need you to work on this with me. I suppose that assumes that everything that they're doing is not important, and it might well be. But it just creates ripples and inefficiency throughout the team. So, working it when you need to, but, my preference, and I think the model's preference, is don't spend lots and lots of time there, and certainly don't make that your default, as I say, unless that's what your job entails. This second category then, the urgent but not important, this really is about being busy, and there's, I've read quite a few articles recently about the cult of being busy, and lots of people talk about how busy they are. And what's the problem with that? Well, if people are just busy, but the work that they're doing is not important, then why are we doing it? So I said earlier, I can imagine from Dwight's perspective that if something came into him that was urgent but not important, delegating it to somebody else would make some sense. I think the other thing that I would add to that, though, is have a think about whether that's the right thing to be doing at all. Is it an activity that your company or organisation needs to be doing? And, if you think of lean methodologies, you don't want to be spending loads of time, or in fact, ideally any time, on things that don't add any value. So, try and minimise the amount of time that you as a leader and your team spends in this space, and in fact your company or organisation. Excuse me. I think the The other thing to say about this space is that depending on the culture of your company or organisation, you might be forced, for want of a better word, to be busy without it adding any value. And again, a couple of thoughts go through my mind there. One is, do you have the right sort of culture in your organisation or company to be able to challenge that? Because that's the ideal point. Sometimes people don't realise what they're doing. They just get stuck in a rut and a way of working, and they don't think about why they're doing things. They just do them because that's what they've always done. So if you have the opportunity, challenge it, and ideally then eliminate it, or eliminate anything that doesn't add any value. I suppose the other point is, if you're in a company or organisation that wants to keep working in this space all the time, it is going to have a negative impact on the morale of your people, and people are not going to want to work there because they're not achieving anything. They won't feel like they're adding value. So, be really careful. And if you haven't got a culture where you can challenge that, you might want to think, is this the sort of company or organisation that you want to work for? I know it sounds dramatic, but, do you really want to spend your career in an organisation or company that is just busy? In fact, most companies just haven't got the time and the money to be able to spend on things that don't add any value. So if there is if you are in a company that is doing that, probably not going to last very long anyway. I'm just going to move Dwight out of the way there. Thank you very much. Just run out of space. So the third category is is non-urgent and not important. So I say the model suggests that you should just bin this activity. I suppose what I've reflected on is that certainly when Dwight was doing this back in the 50s, and Stephen Covey was publishing his book 30 years ago, things aren't quite what they were then. And you might want to think, I suppose the thing I'm thinking about here is there might be things that from a work perspective don't appear urgent or important, but nevertheless might still be important. And I suppose I was thinking about things that help the individual, so either with development or welfare. And I suppose I'm just trying to tease out that this isn't just about work-related things. So if you think about development, for example, that might not be the first thing people think of when they think about, is it important or not? Especially if they are people who are in that top right-hand corner, who normally just want to rush through things and have everyone being really busy and dealing with only the urgent things. Things like development then fall by the wayside, but it is really important. So I'm not suggesting you don't bin things. I'm not suggesting that you carry on with things that are neither urgent nor important, but just that you consider, are they important from a work perspective, but also from a people perspective. And finally, last category, this is the not urgent but important category. And as you can see from the picture there, this is really, this is the place to be. This is the, absolutely on target if you're in this space. I spend a lot of my time in this space for a number of reasons, and again the model suggests that you do the same. Why is that? Well, you are you're creating a much calmer environment in which to work in. You're not going to miss things then, because if you've got activities that really need doing, you're going to schedule them. And for me, there are lots of different methods for scheduling. I like to use time boxing in my diary. So that ensures that the piece of work that needs doing is scheduled, but it's also scheduled for a period of time to be able to deal with it. So if your diary is anything like mine, there are lots of meetings, there are also lots of activities in there. If I just added this to something that was important but not urgent into a to-do list, it would never make it to the top. So I make sure it's scheduled. We have a look at my diary, at my calendar, and we put it in there with the right people involved for the right amount of time, as best as we can guess, to make sure that it's going to be delivered, because it is really important, obviously, otherwise we wouldn't be doing it. And I say that also creates the right atmosphere then. So you're not spending loads of time in the urgent space where you're just dealing with you're just putting out fires all the time, aren't you? You've got time to think, you've got time to reflect on things. You're probably going to make better decisions, and you're going to be more productive, which is what this is all about. So that is, according to me and according to the model, the best place to be. So make sure that you spend the majority of your time up in that quadrant. I suppose it's a bit like the leadership approaches or models that we looked at in earlier videos. There are lots of different ways of doing things, and you might need to dip into each of these as you go through. But the majority of the time I'd recommend you spend in that top left hand corner, some of it in the right hand corner, and then really think about those 2 items at the bottom there. I mean, ideally you wouldn't be getting stuff that is neither urgent nor important anyway coming in, and if you do have things that are urgent but not important, as I say, really think about, are they adding value, and if not, why are you doing them? As ever, I hope you found this useful. It's a model that I've been using for years. If I'm honest, I didn't realise it was called the Eisenhower model. It's really simple. Use it as a tool, but use your intelligence, your analytic skills to work out, with some quite difficult tasks sometimes, which of these boxes they fit in. And again, they might change over time, mightn't they? You might have something that isn't urgent to start with, but by the time you've dealt with some other tasks, perhaps some that took longer than you thought, something becomes more urgent. So it's just a way of helping things to get to the top of your agenda, and making sure that you use your time wisely. If you found this video useful, if you wouldn't mind liking, if you wouldn't mind subscribing, please tell your friends and colleagues about it, and that will just encourage me to keep creating these videos that hopefully will make you a great leader. Thank you very much. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. See you soon.